Welcome to another consumer math lesson. In this lesson, we are going to be taking the 2021 to 2022 state taxes and federal taxes. By the way, these are for California. And we are going to make a calculator with a spreadsheet. So essentially what I'm going to have, this is my finished version. If I enter in any number here, like if I enter $40,000, it will automatically say, for state taxes this year, I owe this much. For federal, I owe this much. And it will add those together. And it does a bunch of things in the background. That's what we're looking for. Let's jump right in. So this blank document, or this blank Google Sheets, will be found in the video description if you want to work along with me. So again, these tax brackets can change from year to year. So if you're looking at this in years in the future, it'll still work if you change these to the correct upper and lower brackets found on like nerdwallet.com or something like that. The first thing that I want to do is I want to figure out how much money is in each tax bracket. And it's a little bit deceiving because it seems like on the $9,326, that $26 goes into this tax bracket, but the $25 stays in the first tax bracket, and that's correct. But the question that you need to ask is, what happens to the $9,325 and the first penny? Does the first penny stay in that first tax bracket, or does it go into the second tax bracket? And the simple answer is, it should go into the second tax bracket. It's not accurate to the cent. So really what should happen here is this is 25.01. That first cent should go in there, and it's not showing that because I'm not showing enough decimal places. But I don't want to go ahead and redo all of these. I want to be able to make it simple, just pulled from NerdWallet, right? So instead of, let me undo all the way. Instead of using this lower tax bracket, I'm basically only going to be using this upper tax bracket. And one thing that I'm going to enter here to make my calculations a lot easier is just to enter a really, really big number for this upper tax bracket. So we'll enter like 1 trillion, which is 12 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. $1 trillion, and that will make it so this calculator works. And notice that we have a lot of blank space down here. We don't need these rows. If you select row 11 just by clicking on the 11, if you hold Command-Shift down, that will select all the cells underneath. You can right-click or double-finger click if you're on a Mac and delete those rows. We won't be needing them. All right, so I want to figure out I'll say money in tax bracket. And for this first one, it's just equal to our 9,325 minus this lower bracket, minus 0. I'm just going to say is equal to that C2. By the way, whenever you type the equal to sign, it enters, it gets ready for an equation. You can type in like a sum, you can do VLOOKUP, you can do a bunch of cool things. So this one you have to be careful. Most people think, yeah, I'm going to do, this is equal to, if you click on the cell C3 and then you do minus, you click on B3, that's the amount of money, right? But remember, this lower bracket is not correct. Really, I should be doing this upper bracket minus the previous upper bracket, because otherwise it'll be off by $1. It's the difference between doing this, and this is the correct way of doing it. I will say is equal to C3 minus, and then click on C2. You'll see that it's off by $1. It doesn't change it that much, but I'm a stickler for being accurate. So I'm going to come back here and change the formula. So this B3 is not correct. It's technically this C2. Whenever you click on a cell, it should enter it into the equation. Hit enter. All right, so that is the correct equation. And I want to drag that equation down. There's 3 or more ways to drag an equation down. There's the lame way, which is you hit Command C and then you go down Command V, Command V, Command V. And every time that you hit Command V, you'll notice that, wait, didn't I copy and paste a formula that had C3? So why did it change to a C4 minus C3? Why did it change for a C5 minus C4? It's because whenever you drag an equation down, it makes these numbers, it increases the row number. The same thing if I were to copy and paste this to the right, it would increase this C to a D. So if I copy this one, Command C and Command V, notice that the C has changed into a D. If you want that number to not change, you need to put, or that letter to not change, you need to put a money symbol in front of it. We'll get into that later. So that's the lame way of spreading code. There's the way that most people know, where if you hover over this bottom right, that little square, and then your cursor turns into the crosshairs, you can click down and hold down and drag and then let go, and then it spreads a formula. You'll see that you get the same answers. And then there's my favorite way, because if you click and drag and you have like 10,000 cells, it takes a long time to drag. So the more efficient way is to hold Command Shift down, and I am making sure that that first cell that the formula is in is selected, and then I just hit Command D. And that spreads it down really quickly. So if I had like a bunch of rows, like I add another 1,000 rows and I go to the very top here, if I were to hit Command Shift down, and it goes to where it sees code, and then hit Command Shift down again. It goes to the very bottom. I could spread that code all the way to the very bottom here, but that is silly, and I don't want to do that. All right, so far so good. Now I want to figure out how much money, how many taxes do we pay if the tax bracket is full. So we'll say for this row header, I will title that tax. I'll say tax for a full, in all caps, bracket. And if the bracket is only partially filled, we'll have to do a different calculation, but it's always nice to see what happens if it's a full bracket. So a full bracket, you just take the money that's in the tax bracket and you multiply it by the percent of the tax bracket. So I can say that this is equal to, and then I can click on D2, and then I can say multiply, which is Shift 8. That little star means multiply, and then I can click over here on the percent and hit enter. So that's our correct code. And really, 1% of $93 or $9,325 should be $93.25. So we don't have the correct rounding here. So to actually see those cents, I'm going to go ahead and increase the decimal places. It won't change the calculations, but I just want to see it. All right. I need to spread that code. Again, the lame way is doing the crosshairs. It might be faster for you, but I like the hotkeys. Command Shift down, Command D. Once you get used to the hotkeys, it does go a little bit faster. And do you notice how right now our text is kind of overflowing to the next column? I'd like to resize this. Resize actually all of the columns to make them look nicer. So if I select all the cells by just clicking up here in the top left, that selects everything. And then you can, once your cursor changes to this little arrow, and then you see that the line behind here, the divider between the columns is blue, you can double click on that and it will resize all the columns to the smallest possible size. And I'm also realizing that that top doesn't look very nice. I can make that, if I click on 1 to select all of row 1, I can make them all bold, but I don't want to. I'm going to make them all centered. I think that looks really nice. Yeah, a little bit better. I should probably use capital letters. That would make it even more official. All right. I think we're good for now. What I like to do is I like to kind of leave a column as a buffer zone. So I'm going to drag column F and say that's my buffer zone. And then I'm going to do my calculations over here for what happens if I have a not full bracket. So I'm going to say this is my income. So if my income is, I don't know, let's make it 100,000, 100, 1, 2, 3, 100,000. And by the way, it automatically turned into currency because you're using my template. If it's not a currency, you can click over here on the Format as Currency button. All right, so if my income is $100,000, I want my taxes to go into this column. So essentially, we need a bit of code now. This is the hard bit. We want to basically say, and maybe I can type in some pseudocode. Pseudocode being, pseudo means fake, so I'm typing in fake code. I'm typing in English, essentially, to explain it. If you're following along, you don't need to type this in. I'm just trying to explain my work. I want to basically check some things. So I want to say, if my bracket is full, copy the cell from column E. Column E. Because column E has the tax from full bracket. It already has that code. And then if my tax bracket is not full, then I should have like a then here. If then, right? Oop. Then you have to do overflow, then do the percent times the overflow. So it's going to be then multiply percent times, again, times is that Shift 8 key. I hope you're okay with that. Do the percent times the overflow. All right. So that's a pretty good pseudocode. What is overflow? That would be helpful to define. Overflow is the amount, it's our income minus our upper bracket. So overflow is income minus upper bracket. All right, so that's what I want to do, and that is a lot. Let's see if we can do that. I'm going to go ahead and just do my code down here so I can see my pseudocode. So I need an if statement. So again, to enter code, you need to start with an equal to sign. And I'm realizing that this is kind of small. I could zoom in here. Actually, let's do that. Let's go ahead and say, hold on, let me hit escape. Let me go to this and say, yeah, 200%. That way you can actually see my code. A little bit too big now. That's fine. So equals to, I need an if statement. So you'll see that this menu comes up. You can actually click on if and it'll make it all caps. I don't care about that. And then you start your parentheses. Your function is started. If you have no idea what's going on, you can click on the question mark and it says, yes, there's some expression that you're going to check. Then it has two different outputs, the output if it's true and the output if it's false. So first, the condition. I want to check if my bracket is full. So the bracket that I'm looking at, and I don't want to go back, I just want to slide over. Okay, I changed my mind. I'm going to do a blank if statement so I can zoom back out. Zoom out a little bit so I can see things. Okay, there we go. I want to do an if statement where my bracket is full if my income, so I'm going to click on income, if this income is greater than my upper bracket. So if it's greater than my upper bracket, and right now I'm selecting H3, I'm selecting this cell, so I want to use C3. I don't want to click on C2 because that will be the wrong row. Keep the rows in line. So if my income is greater than the upper bracket, that means that I'm full. So that's checking that condition. Is the bracket full? So if it's full, then I'm going to do the yes value, the output if it's true. The output if it's true is, well, I set up here, and it's kind of hard to see. Can I zoom over? Then copy the cell from E. So E is going to be E2, or E3, sorry. So click on E3. And then the opposite, so if it's false, that means if my tax bracket is not full, and this is the harder version of my if statement, the harder part of my if statement. So if it's not full, then I'm going to do the percent times overflow. So what's my percent? My percent is going to be 2%, because again, I'm in row 3, and I'm going to multiply by my overflow. And overflow, I'm going to keep in parentheses. I'm going to start another set of parentheses. My overflow is going to be, again, income minus the previous upper bound. So the previous upper bound would be right here, but there's going to be a problem with that. And I'll show you it in a sec, but I mean, it's the previous upper bound. So the $9,326, there's $1 of overflow because you take whatever your income is. If it's $9,326, there's $1 of overflow, and you multiply that $1 of overflow by 2%. So all of our code makes sense. If I hit return, I mean, it gets the right number. But the problem, though, is when I spread my code, and I am just going to click this to go up, no, I guess it did work. But watch this. What happens if I do like 5,000? Then I get a negative number, and I also am using weird things here. So let me actually go back here. When you click in your code, notice that it highlights all of the cells that you're currently using. For some reason, we're changing from our income, our G2, to G1. That's not our income, that is the label for the income. So the problem here is when we dragged our cell up, the G2 changed to a G1. And again, that's supposed to happen. If you want it to not change, then you need to come back here and edit the code. Edit this code and say, G money 2. I don't want the 2 to change. I want it to always be the second cell. And I'm not going to drag this left or right, so I don't have to do a money sign in front of the G. So G money 2, G money 2. And notice now when we drag this up, and I select this code, now it is selecting the correct income. It didn't go to the label of income. But there's still a problem. Notice that it is now selecting in blue this upper bracket, this C1, and that is a problem. So I don't want to do the upper bracket like that. There's got to be a better way. And in fact, there is a better way, because really this C2 that let me go ahead and escape out of this. This C2 cell is the same thing as my lower bracket minus 1. Check it out. So if I do 9,326 minus 1, I get that bracket. If I do 22,108 minus 1, I get 22,107. So really, instead of taking the thing above it, I can just take the thing left of it minus 1. So I'm going to go here and say, instead of using C2 right here, I'm going to change C2, and I'm going to put another set of parentheses, and I'm going to say it's really B3 minus 1, which is the same thing as C2. So I'm going to hit enter, and now spread my code, and it should be working. So far, so good. And notice that when you edit the code and select all the cells, all of these are the correct things that I'm looking for. You do have this weird -1 thing if you're looking at the code closely, but it doesn't matter. I don't think anyone's going to have to file their taxes with $1, because right now the mistake is, like, if you enter $1, you're going to get, well, that's actually right. If you do $0, oh, it still is right. Okay, at least this cell is right. But then you're asking, like, but this doesn't make sense. If you drag this down, which it theoretically should do, all of these are negative values. In fact, if I go to like 40,000, anything after 40,000, you can see we just barely filled a little bit of this tax bracket. This tax bracket is totally empty. We never made over 48,000. Everything after that is negative, which is a problem. So in order to fix that, we need to check one more if statement. If we have enough income to even qualify for the bracket, then do the previous code that we made. And let me just check. This code is an overflow. It's not using the full tax bracket. I've made that mistake in the past. All right. So we need to fix our code yet again. So in here, I'm going to grab all of this if statement and not the equal to sign. So basically everything except for the equal to sign. I'm going to hit Command X, which is the same thing as Command C and delete. It's a cut. And I'm going to do a check. I want to check, first of all, are we even in this tax bracket? So here's my pseudocode. So if in bracket, or I guess if income is more than the lower bracket, then do the previous code. If income is not more than the lower bracket, like we don't make $1 million. Why do we care about if we don't make $500,000? Why do we care if we're in the 625,000 or more tax bracket? And in this case, then return a 0 or something like that, right? So that's our pseudocode. So let's go ahead and do that. So I took all of this code already, and so if I hit Command A equals Command V, it's still that same code, but now I'm going to grab all that code. That one is already Command X'd, and I'm going to say if our income, so I have to click on this G2, but remember, it needs to be a G money 2, so let's go ahead and fix that right now. And if G money 2 is greater than the lower bound, and really we should be checking the previous upper bracket. So it's really the lower bracket minus 1, because that's the same thing as the previous upper bracket. It's the same trick again, so we don't accidentally go out of bounds. So if it's bigger than the previous upper bracket, which is what we said here, then do the following code, and then we can hit Command V. And then now we can do the comma, and if it's not in this bracket, then we can just output a 0, end our parenthesis, and hit enter. So theoretically now, if we drag this code down by hitting Command Shift down arrow key and hit Command D, once I hit Command D, those negatives should just turn into zeros. Let's try it. Woo, all right. So our code is basically done. Now we just need to add up all of our tax brackets. So we'll say total taxes. I'm randomly deciding to use capital letters. By the way, if you want to edit a cell, you hit enter and then you can start typing. Or if you're like in Microsoft, like a different operating system, there's the word I'm looking for, hit like F2 or something. And if you just were to type over this, if I start typing and hit enter, it just types over it. So to edit, you have to hit special keys. Anyway, for total taxes, I just want to add up all these. So here's the way that you should not do it. You could say this is equal to, click this shift equal to sign to get the plus this, plus this, plus this. And you can see that this is just tedious and it's not what I want to do. So don't do that. Here's what you can do. Use the sum command. And then the sum command just says, just insert an array, and you just click and drag those. That's a cool way of doing it. Cool thing with Google Sheets is you can just leave this last one blank, H2 through H10, change it to H2 through H, and it's now the entire column, so that if you randomly, you're like, oh, I need one more row, and you add one more row, this code will still be correct. If there's like a number here, 1, it'll still update. Kind of nice. Anyway, we don't need that, so I'm going to go ahead and, oh, not clear row, delete row. All right, so that number is done. We have our answer, but we only did state taxes. Again, these are the state taxes for California in 2021 to 2022. We need to do the federal taxes, and you should already have this from the template from the video description. Before we leave, though, let's go ahead and tidy up. So I'm noticing there's a lot of wasted blank space. So I'm going to, again, select everything, double-click on the divider between the columns to resize. And I don't really need these columns over here. So if I click on my column for J, Command-Shift right arrow key, all of these columns I don't want right-click or double-finger click out here, and then you can delete those columns. All right, this is looking nice and tidy. So what I want to do now is I basically want to do that same code for federal taxes. And the cool thing with Excel or Google Sheets, whatever you're using, in this case Google Sheets, is we can copy and paste code and it should still work. So notice the one thing that we did before we started doing code was we entered a big number here. So I'm just going to Command C this to copy it. Oh, don't look at my mail. And then come over here and Command V that. So I now have that same number. Now I can just copy and paste the rest of the code. Stop doing that, Mr. Sindel. My God. So I'm just going to drag over all of this stuff. Again, there's a faster way than dragging. You click on one, Command Shift down, Command Shift right. All right. And you can select all of that if you have to select a large region. Command C to copy all of it. And again, these tops are made with, those are text, but everything down here was made with code. So theoretically, if I come down here and I click in the top left of where I want to enter my code and I hit Command V, it should work. Boom, and it does. And you'll notice that we didn't really need these rows down here. So let's go ahead and delete those. So I'm going to click on row 9 by clicking on the 9, Command Shift down arrow key, right click, delete rows. And this should now all be working. Remember that column F was our spacer row, so I'll go ahead and remake that as our spacer row. I'm noticing that there's like weird overflow. I can't really read these, so I'm going to select everything by clicking on the top left. Double click the divider between the columns to resize everything, and it's looking pretty nice except for F got resized, which is kind of annoying. Let's go do that. All right, looking good. Again, we don't need column J, so click on the J, Command Shift right arrow key, right click, delete, and we're looking pretty good. And does this, I mean, it seems to be working. I think that's the right number. I can always run it against my actual calculator that I spent more time doing, but this seems to be working. So if I enter like 100, let's do 60,000, 600,000, 6, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And that seems to be working. Ooh, these need to be resized again a little bit. There we go, I can see. That seems to be working. Like that tax bracket is all the way full. Whoa, my cursor stopped moving. That's a little bit weird. There it goes. And if I enter something like right on the dot, what if I enter 523? Let's just copy and paste this. Copy and paste. And it hits it right on the dot. And the very next dollar, $1, yeah, it overflows just a little bit in the next tax bracket. It seems to be working with my small amount of tests. So remember, we want to, I want to be able to do this all automatically. I don't want to show my work. I just want the consumer of my my calculator to just see nice and simple, make it easy for the user. So we're going to come down here to the bottom left where it says add sheet, this little plus, and then click on that. We have a new sheet. This sheet, I'm going to call it whatever I want. I'm going to call it main because that's our main program. And I'm going to drag this tab, this spreadsheet all the way to the left. So we click down, drag to the left, please, drag to the left all the way. There we go. Okay, maybe I'm just going to drag this tab to the right. Haha, there we go. So now main is on the very left. Usually when you open up a spreadsheet, it opens up to the first tab unless you have a custom URL that you're entering. This is the first thing that I want the consumer to see. So I want the consumer to enter their income. I will come down here and it will tell you, oh yeah, these are your state taxes. And it will tell you your federal taxes. I'm using capitals to make it look really nice. And then at the very bottom, it will tell you like total taxes. All right, and we don't need anything else other than that. We're going to have some information there, which means column C and to the right, we don't need anymore. So click column C, Command Shift right arrow key, right click, and delete those columns. We don't need anything. And same thing with row 7 on down. We don't need any of that. So click on the 7 to select row 7, Command Shift down arrow key, right click, and delete. This is the only thing that needs to be seen. In fact, maybe I have someone elderly and I want the font size to be really big. Let's change it to like 18. Double click on this. Yeah, now it looks really great. All right, so what happens, I'm gonna enter in a blank amount, like income of 100,000. 1 with 2 and then 3 zeros. Oh, it's not formatted as a currency. So to format as a currency, once you're selecting the correct cell, B1, come up here to the format as currency, this little money symbol, and now it's formatted as currency, and it's off again. So again, I'm coming up here, I'm hovering over the right side of the column where the arrow changes to the cursor, double clicking to resize it correctly. And one other thing that I really like doing is I like color coding what the user is supposed to touch and what the consumer is supposed to pay attention to. So typically what I do is I make my input this green. It's like the light green one, I guess. Hey, consumer, go ahead and enter a number here, and this is the number that you're going to pay attention to. These are your total taxes. Maybe I'll make that yellow. These are going to be calculated automatically, and we can do that pretty slickly. So I don't know if that's a word, but it is pretty slick. So what we want to do is we want this $100,000 to be pulled into this spot right here for your income. Right now, we have to manually enter this. So I'm going to type over this. Again, as soon as you start typing, it types over it, which is kind of nice. That means escape, by the way. If I just hit equal to, I can now directly link it to a cell. For example, I want to link to that cell. I click on that cell, and those cells are copied. But I don't want to copy it to a cell in here. I want it to be equal to a cell from a different tab. So once you type in the equal to, you can come down here, click on a different tab, and you can see it's still saying equal to. I can click on this B1, and notice it says now main exclamation mark B1. That means it's pulling from the main tab and then B1. Hit enter and check it out. It's now changed to 100,000, and I'm noticing that my numbers got a little bit big, so I'm going to resize my cells. Oop. Drag it, select my cells, double click. There we go. Now I want to be able to take this number and put this number back in my main tab right here. So once you come back to your main tab, click on the state taxes. You can click on equal to, come back to your previous tab for state taxes, and click on your answer. And it has this really long name, exclamation mark, I2, and hit enter. And there are our state taxes. Excellent. Same thing again. All right, so I want this 100,000 to be pulled into this spot right here. So if this income, I'm going to type over. I'm just going to hit equal to on my keyboard, come over here to the main tab, and click on our income. So once it's selected, it should read main exclamation mark B1, and hit enter, and it's now 100,000. Cool. It changes automatically with code. And just watch this. Just a test, right? If I come back here to the main tab and I'm like, I want this to be 150,000. Does it automatically change this to 150,000? Ah, it does. Okay. And again, I want to send the answer back to my main tab. So I'm going to come back to my main tab. Under federal taxes, this B4 cell, I'm going to say equal to, and then switch back to my federal taxes tab and click on I2, and it should look like that federal taxes, exclamation mark I2, hit enter, and we pulled in all of our information. We're basically done. Again, for total taxes, you could make it in a simple form. You could say it's equal to, click on B3, shift equal to sign to do the plus, and then click on B4. That does work, but I technically like formulas, so I'm going to go with an equal to sum, and then I'm just going to click and drag and my parentheses and call it good. Congratulations, we are now done with our calculator, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. The cool thing about this calculator too, before we end, is in future years this will not be correct because these tax brackets, these lower and upper brackets will change. But the cool thing about our calculator is because all of this is done with code, the only thing that we need to do is come back here and change it. Like if they change this to 1.2%, we just change this to 1.2%. If they change the lower and upper brackets, that changes as well. The cool thing too is if they add another tax bracket, like if you want to insert a row in here, you can just drag these formulas down. Like all of these were just formulas. If you drag them down again, they should work. And I need an actual number there for them to actually work. But it's easy to, it's easy to edit all of our previous existing numbers and stuff because our formulas are, they're working. All right, that's all I've got. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions, you can post them on YouTube in the comments or in Google Classroom in our assignment. And I'll talk to you guys later.